Is using AI cheating? Are robots coming for your job? Can you plan for the future of work when tech is evolving faster than you can keep up?
There's no doubt that things are changing very quickly. I've always been mindful that these technologies will disrupt the best laid plans.
Embracing technology takes stepping out of your comfort zone. If you push back for too long, Oliver Pickup says you could fall behind.
Companies are letting people go. Recently, IBM, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, let 8,000 HR professionals go.
Oliver is a freelance journalist and an expert in the future of work.
There are certain areas, certain industries that will develop. One is
whether you want to make a successful career pivot, supercharge your productivity, or set yourself up for the long haul, he has the answers.
From a business perspective, for business leaders, is maybe to go into your business, your organisation, and ask every worker to list all their tasks. And then, through my pivot, my chance encounter with the tarot card reader, what really helped me was...
Hello and welcome to The Switch from St James's Place Financial Advisor Academy. I'm Gee Foottit. If you're ready for a better, more fulfilling career, this is your go-to resource to start that journey. Oliver, welcome to the show. You're a freelance journalist and expert in the future of work.
Thank you very much,
welcome.
G. Great to be here.
In an age of AI, is it possible to future-proof your career anymore? Or is adaptability the only real strategy?
Well, I think future-proofing your career is perhaps not as possible as it once was. I think you need to be future-ready. And to be future-ready, I'd encourage you to develop what I call the 6 C's. And the 6 C's are collaboration, communication, compassion, courage, creativity, and curiosity. And these are very human skills that will come to the fore. Adaptability, I think that's your superpower.
Absolutely. I love that. The 6 C's, remember that. So has technology made it easier or harder to make a bold career leap?
Well, in many ways, I think it has democratized opportunity. Access to technology has created more opportunities. But I also think it spurred what I call FOBO, and perhaps we'll go into a bit more detail on FOBO. It's the fear of becoming obsolete, because it certainly spurred me to alter my career, enhance my career. But yes, I think it enables you to test your career. There's greater opportunities for learning online as well. So I'm ambivalent about it.
Excellent. Well, we often hear the phrase now. I think previously it would be AI might take your job, fear of being obsolete. But now I'm hearing more often AI won't take your job, but people who use AI will. Is that true?
I think, yes, to an extent, it is true. But I think we need to reframe it really. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the chip-making manufacturers, had this framework that suggested that AI isn't going to take the jobs of 50% of people. It's actually going to do 50% of the work for 100% of the people. So I think it's important to be part of the so-called AI class, and that is understand AI, because I think people will get left behind if we're not careful.
So will that mean our working week might change?
Well, it might well do. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, well, since the start of the pandemic, really, about the 4-day week, and I've certainly written and spoken a lot about it. I really like the idea. You know, 100 years ago, we were all working 6 days a week, and before that, we were working 7 days a week. So there's definitely the direction of travel is there, and there's no doubt that tools like AI and other technologies will take away the drudgery of our jobs and hopefully leave us to the more interesting, creative facets of our jobs.
Absolutely. Now, this podcast is for career switchers looking for a career change. And you have already mentioned that you pivoted yourself to become speaker, podcaster, writer. Can you tell us a bit about your journey?
It started 20 years ago after I finished my degree in English literature and language at St Andrews up in Scotland. After a great fun 4 years, where in actual fact, my first tutorial was me, Prince William, and 7 female students as well. So it was a very good fun 4 years. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was really into sport. And I was okay at English. So becoming a sports journalist was the natural progression. I started out in newspapers. I was at the Observer and the Guardian. And then I went to an agency. And from there, I wrote for all of the newspapers in the land. I've been bylined in every single newspaper in England, which I'm fairly proud about. And having a unusual surname, let's say, Pickup, that's helped me, I think, in my career. But about a decade ago, just after my first child was born, the weekends became quite sacrosanct. And as a sports journalist, you have to be out at games and you have to be reporting, on a Sunday for a Monday paper. So it did take up a lot of the weekend, and the weekends became really important for family time. So I pivoted, I moved away, and I was interested in technology and business. And again, I think having children really helps refocus what's important. And there was a vested interest in me knowing what was coming up with technology. So since then, I've been a technology and business journalist, and that was going fantastically well. And then in November 2022, ChatGPT was launched and changed everything initially. I could see that this was going to cause upheaval in my career if I stuck to writing. So actually, I had FOBO. I had the fear of becoming obsolete. And to a larger or lesser extent, that's happened for journalists, for writers already. So a chance encounter with a tarot card reader in a cafe in Beckenham near where I live while my car was being serviced. She'd missed her 10:30 appointment hadn't turned up, and I was waiting for my car to be finished. So I said, I'm at this kind of career crossroads. I'm a writer, but I don't know what to do because of AI. Can you help me? And so she pulled out some cards, and the two main cards were the Page of Swords and the Knight of Pericles. And I didn't know anything about tarot before meeting this lady. And she told me that the Page of Swords is all about communicating. So she could tell that I needed to communicate. And the Knight of Pericles was about sort of financial success, but I was required to go outside my comfort zone. So from that chance meeting, it really spurred me to develop my career as a speaker. I hosted a podcast for a year, a weekly podcast, which was great. I've started a newsletter as well called Go Flux Yourself, which I think probably makes my mum blush. But that's all about what I see and hear. Every month I will deliver a long read newsletter on the trends, and it focuses on recruitment, it focuses on what business should be doing, focuses on what parents should be doing as well, because it's changing the whole time. We're in such a state of flux. And all of these elements have really helped my career. And, I don't really know what I'm going to be doing in 3 or 4 years' time. It may be there's a book. It may be that I develop the newsletter. I'll have more keynote speeches and opportunities to speak. I've elevated myself out of this comfort zone, and it's been thrilling. It's been scary at times, but it's been thrilling, and long may it continue.
So prior to meeting this chance, how did you describe
tarot card reader?
Tarot card reader. Was getting out of your comfort zone something you would often do?
I think because I've become a reasonably successful writer and people knew me within that space, within the technology and business space, and to an extent the sports arena, although I've moved away from that. I had become rather complacent. What worked yesterday was definitely going to work tomorrow. But then through the advent of generative AI, I could see things shifting so quickly, and I have. And it's been, in a way, a privilege to be on the sort of front row chronicling this change that we're going through. But yeah, it definitely spurred me into action. I've always been a person who's said yes to lots of things, and I do enjoy the thrill of trying new things. And maybe they don't always work, but I'm always willing to learn. And I think that's a key asset that people need to have these days.
I think that's fantastic. We have a saying in our academy, BBQ, be brave quicker.
Yeah.
It's about getting outside of your comfort zone, or getting out of your own way sometimes and trying something and learning from it, whether it's a good or a bad outcome.
And it's interesting because I think sometimes you know that you need to change. You know that there's something more you can do, or maybe you're not reaching your potential. Sometimes it just takes a chance encounter with someone just to spur you, to give you that, I don't know, acknowledgement or validation. Courage,
validation,
exactly.
Absolutely. So thinking back to your earlier career, sports was your passion. Could you have ever predicted that you'd become an expert in AI and tech the way that you are now, considering most of us probably hadn't even heard of AI back then?
No, I don't think so. when I started, I wanted to be a professional sportsman. That didn't quite work out. So sports journalism was the next best thing. And I had a dream of becoming a broadsheet writer, a chief sports writer for a broadsheet. And I even sent emails to two of the most respected writers at the time, Simon Barnes at the Times and Henry Winter, who was at the Times, I think, as well. He's moved around a bit now, but they both wrote back to me in fountain pen and gave me encouragement. So that's fantastic. But I was very much, a traditional journalist, want to be in print, want to see my name in print. And then, of course, the advent of the internet completely upended things. Newspapers now are managing decline. They can't work out the business model, the advertising model. So I was forced to change quite quickly. And I think that's it. I think since then, I've always been mindful that, these technologies will disrupt the best laid plans.
Absolutely. What's your sport of choice?
Well, I played quite a lot of rugby union, but I covered all sorts of sports, rugby league. I even did some blind cricket for one feature. I also quite like football. I'm a Manchester City fan.
Excellent. But back to AI. What are you learning through your writing and the way the world of work is shifting thanks to tech innovations like AI?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt things are changing very quickly. We are in this state of finding out, I think, what AI can and can't do. There are, countless examples, I'm sure, in today's news of people losing their jobs or AI use cases for good and bad. It's been, I think, at times important to not let that overwhelm you. And I think I always go back to the kind of Stoics. You only control what you can control and work on yourself, work on your purpose. And actually through my pivot, my chance encounter with the tarot card reader, what really helped me was determining my values, my professional and my personal values. And I took some time on this, and I worked out that it's an acronym, CHEWI, not a Star Wars character, but it stands for C, community, H, health, and that's mental and physical. U is understanding, and that's being curious as well. And I is interconnectedness. So those now really help steer what I do in my work and away from work. And yeah, that's really helped me.
It's been a recurring theme in the guests that we interview on the podcast, and everybody has taken time to understand themselves. And I feel that's such an important thing for the listeners to understand is, So how did you come about creating that framework?
Well, I read up a little bit about the importance of values, and there's no doubt if you have a touchstone, then you can use that for any decision you want, really. That's your sort of go-to strategic tool. And because you have that, it makes work easier, it makes work more fun, it makes your relationships more fun, it gives you a happier life, really. So, I mean, there are various ways that you can determine your values. I've seen one idea was write down 10 things that you like doing, and then you give yourself a sort of time limit of, I think it was half a minute, to then strike off 4 or 5. So you're left with 4 or 5, and then you really try and drill down why you think it is that you've not crossed those off and why they're important to you. So that's quite a good little tool to use. And I think that's the tool that I use. But honestly, since then, since taking that time, it's helped me in so many ways. And I think actually people are worried about what's going on in their work and in their lives, and because of AI, and business leaders as well are almost feel obliged or forced to steam ahead with AI. But I think it does take that moment of calmness and actually determining, why you're doing this. That's what's going to win people the race.
Absolutely. And when you've mapped out your own personal values, is it easier to make decisions?
Yeah, totally. If I'm invited to talk at an event, I will look into the client and see what I can offer that client. and if that client aligns with my values as well. So it's enabled me to really focus professionally and personally as well. I've found that because having the C at the start, having community at the start, I've made decisions to help my local community, whether it's through speaking at schools or business events. And through that, there's just been this enrichment of relationships and connection. And I think that's it. I really focus on what I like to call human work evolution. And I think the future of work often has humans as an afterthought. So using this Chewy framework has really helped channel my focus on human work evolution.
Amazing. And what would your advice be to people who might want to implement a similar framework but don't know where to start?
Well, I think, just enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Enjoy sitting down, working out what's important to you, and working out how, those 4, 3, 5 values will really help propel you personally and professionally. And this is it. There is a sort of overlap. So these values people sometimes have different personal values to their professional values. I found that if I have a sort of catch-all, then it makes it easier.
Yeah, definitely. So what are the jobs of the future?
Well, it's a very good question. There's no doubt that things are changing very quickly. And it was interesting to note that last year's Edelman Trust Barometer found that 88% of global workers are unsure about the safety of their jobs. So we're living through a time where people are very, very unsure. And you see it in the news all the time. Companies are letting people go. Recently, IBM, one of the biggest tech companies in the world, let 8,000 HR professionals go. So in terms of careers of the future, I think there are certain areas, certain industries that will develop. One is in financial services. I think people have more interest in what they're doing with their assets. And it's great to see already that financial advisors, for example, are using technology to have better data at their fingertips so they can provide better customer service. And we're seeing that across a number of other industries as well. But I think sustainability and climate adaptation is going to be an interesting area. But human AI collaboration, that's also a really interesting area. I interviewed a guy who was at Dell recently at a tech event, and he was saying that they've recently appointed a chief AI officer. And through this officer, they have really supercharged their innovation. So all AI ideas go through this person. So I think we're going to start seeing a few more facilitators. So that's definitely another area. But I think ethics and governance, they're also going to be interesting areas in the coming years. But there are definitely going to be a raft of new jobs along the line. And I think a good way to, from a business perspective, for business leaders, is maybe to go into your business, your organization, and ask every worker to list all their tasks, and then work out what tasks can be automated, what tasks can be done by AI. And quite often there will be those menial tasks that are pretty boring. And then it's about flipping that and focusing on what tasks give you most joy and enable you to be more creative with your work. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
It all sounds great to me, and I'm really excited, although a lot of it does feel a bit like the unknown. Now, you mentioned ethics. How can industries keep up with regards to ethics? For example, in my profession, in financial services, there's so many considerations around ethics. So how can we ensure that nothing slips through the net?
Yeah. Well, of course, in financial services, it's a heavily regulated industry. So there does need to be that increased due diligence, governance, caution around adopting certainly AI tools and innovation. And I think generally that's the same across other industries. We are starting to see some examples, unfortunately, where AI has been used blindly, almost without human consideration and without a human in the loop. And that causes great damage to companies. I mean, there was a case last year, I think it was, where a chatbot of a Canadian airline company provided the wrong ticket and made a customer pay too much, and it went to court, and Air Canada just said, "Oh, well, look, it was the AI," and that sort of dereliction of duty is something that's so damaging to brands, and that they really need to think about it properly. And I think, again, it comes back down to going back to basics. What are the values of your company? Rather than charging ahead with these AI solutions, rather than not thinking about the organization, the transformation in a holistic manner, then you're going to be in trouble along the way. You know, we talk about people, technology, and process. They need to be invested in, certainly financially, but also in terms of effort and training. They need to be managed carefully as well, and equally.
Absolutely. And I heard the turn of phrase hallucinations.
Oh, yes.
So this is when you're using an AI tool, call it ChatGPT, and it tells you an answer to something you've asked it, but it's got its answer from the World Wide Web or wherever it gets its information from, but it isn't actually real. But we perceive it to be true. We perceive it to be real. So it's managing those risks in the business, how you use the tools, creating a safe environment, and maybe a closed network or something.
That's right. I think data privacy is going to be very important, because these AI models are trained on whatever they're allowed to be trained on. And this is the important point, actually, about AI and about generative AI. It's only historical data that it's trained on. So it can't be creative, that it doesn't create anything new. But there was an example recently where Grok, Elon Musk's chatbot and platform started spewing anti-Semitic, bile, and that was because of what it was trained on. So I think because of this example, lots of other businesses are thinking, oh, well, actually, if that happens to Elon Musk, and then we need to be really careful. And I think there is this sort of pullback now. It's as though people have galloped, quickly ahead. And that certainly doesn't help, because of the tech giants in the US in particular are rampaging ahead. They're not waiting for regulation. They're not waiting to be told what to do. Yeah, there just needs to be that sort of moment of pause to really ensure that what we're doing is for good and not bad. There was a quote from a futurist that I collaborate with, Gert Leonhard, and he said, "The wolf we feed is the wolf that will win." And I think that's quite important to remember as well.
Absolutely. Now, there are also worries around how AI can damage our brain health.
Yeah.
There was a recent study that showed over-reliance on ChatGPT is potentially impacting brain health. What can we learn from that study?
Yeah, I think it's, I did see the MIT study, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's probably too early to say. Most of us have been using ChatGPT or other generative AI platforms for maybe 2-3 years. There's no question that it has the potential to degrade some skills. So it may be people aren't thinking as much about, let's say, strategizing or even writing. And I think these skills are crucial. So I think if you view ChatGPT or the other platforms as very confident interns, a kind of army of interns, that's probably the good way to a good way to think about it. Don't trust their word. They may hallucinate. Always check your sources. Always be curious. And I think having that, what might be called truth literacy, is going to be crucial in the coming years.
And now you're a parent, Ollie?
Yeah.
How old are your children?
I've got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Fantastic. I've got an 8-year-old, so right in the middle. How do we prepare our children for the world of AI?
Well, this is something that I wrestle with, and I think it comes down to some of those C's that I mentioned before, the 6 C's: collaboration, communication, compassion, courage, creativity, and curiosity. And I think if you can help develop those skills in your children, then you're onto a winner. I think that by and large, school curricula isn't fit for purpose. it's amazing to think that when I did my postgrad in magazine journalism, we were guaranteed a job. There's no guarantee of any jobs of our kids, who are going to be entering the workforce in 10 to 15 years. And I think having that adaptability, focusing on the curiosity, encouraging that from an early age, whether that's through managed screen time, whether it's through sport or the arts, I think it's really important to encourage the arts as well and encourage that creativity, which again, generative AI can't do. It can't do new stuff. It can't create from fresh. So I think if we can encourage that, but it's also about being good people, being kind people, focusing on, I think there was a great quote that I heard from a lady called Minouche Shafik, who was president of Columbia University until quite recently. She's now at the V&A actually over here in London. But she said, in the past, jobs were about muscle. Now they're about knowledge. And in the future, they'll be about the heart. So I think that's quite a nice way to actually visualize this shift that we're seeing now, because it is a shift. We've not reached the destination. Anish Raman, who is Chief Economical Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn, it's quite a mouthful. He talks about moving from the knowledge economy to the relationship economy. So I think having those what might be perceived as soft skills, and in a pejorative way, they are not. They are the true human skills that we need. But I also think it's important to perhaps consider AI is not about artificial intelligence. Yuval Noah Harari, author of *Sapiens* and many other books, talks about alien intelligence. So it's doing stuff that isn't human, and we need to work out how to collaborate with AI rather than wanting it and programming it to do stuff that humans can do.
Absolutely. Now, if someone wants to embrace technology but doesn't know where to start, what is a realistic first step for them?
Well, I think Microsoft turned 50 recently, and I think they have released all of their AI courses for free for the moment, I think. So I would have a look there. I use an online academy called Section. That's a very good resource. You pay, I think it was a couple of £100, but I'm constantly learning. And I think it's really important to take that first step and follow what interests you. I mean, if you see something in a newspaper or online, oh, what's that about? Oh, maybe that can help me. And again, I think maybe a good exercise would be to list down your tasks of your job and work out what can be automated and what you really like. And actually, perhaps you can see what technology could help augment rather than replace the things that you really like.
Absolutely. And are there any particular technologies or trends right now that people should be paying closer attention to?
Well, what I'm particularly worried about is something called the antisocial century. And this came from an article by a chap called Derek Thompson in The Atlantic. It's a long read, came out in January or February, I think. But he makes the point that we have made technology, fantastic technology, but it's caused a real disconnect. We would sooner spend time with our iPhones than go and have dinner with our friends. And what really worries me is that we are in this loneliness epidemic. People have never been more lonely, according to studies. There's a Gallup poll that found that last year, global workers, 20% of them, so 1/5, say that they're lonely at least one day a week. And it's incredibly damaging. It's the equivalent, being lonely is the equivalent of smoking 20 cigarettes a day. You've got a 26% higher chance of death. And again, going back to Derek Thompson's point about technology, there is a ginormous rise in AI companions, AI girlfriends and boyfriends. So as a father, as a parent, it really worries me that our kids are going to grow up with this tech that actually pulls them away from their real life friends and those messy relationships that are so important for creativity, for resilience, and so on. So that's what I'm worried about at the moment. So I think I'd encourage businesses to really focus on developing AI and other tools for good.
Is it ever too late in life to adapt or learn new tech?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. It's about the mindset that you have, really. I do some charity work, though, that's illuminating. It's called Linking Lives, and I go and visit usually elderly people once a week. And there was this chap that I used to go and see. He was in his 90s, called Terry, and he didn't even have a mobile phone. He had a landline, and it was fascinating to see how he struggled, but also was very happy without technology. But I think I can see it with my parents. I can see it with my friends' parents. If there is this willingness to learn, then they are all over the, iPhones, the apps, the latest tech. So I don't think age is a barrier. The technology is supposed to be user-friendly. And there are stories about my great auntie, using an iPad because her friend was using it at the kind of nursing home. So I think, I don't think there's any barrier. I think you've just got to try and spark that curiosity and see where that takes you.
Now, you mentioned a couple of concerns, but people in general can be quite cynical about new technologies and what they mean for society. But what helps you personally stay curious about tech rather than worried about it?
Well, I think I find the advancement of technology thrilling, and thrilling can mean a little bit scary as well. It's a bit like getting to the top of a roller coaster, waiting for the big dip. That's kind of how I feel. But again, I go back to sort of stoicism and my values. There's a great quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was the last of the 5 good leaders in Rome. So this is a 2,000-year-old quote. And he said, supposedly, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And that's really stuck with me. I think that's a great bit of advice. So the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. I don't try and use social media. I switch off from that. Occasionally I switch off from all the news as well, because it can get you down. So I think it's about finding your place, working out your sort of spot, having your values that will ground you, and building from there.
I love that. Now, we talked about going outside of your comfort zone at the beginning of our conversation. What's one thing our listeners could do this week to push themselves out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I think amazing to think that since that tarot card reading prompting me to go outside my comfort zone professionally actually spurred me to go outside my comfort zone in my personal life as well. And I did about a year ago a skydive for the first time. I've got a fear of heights. So I did this charity skydive for the local NHS trust where my wife works. And again, it was just incredibly thrilling. But I wouldn't recommend your listeners to go and jump out of a plane at 12,000 feet. I think maybe it would be a good exercise to think of those 6 C's. Maybe take one of those and really focus on it. Really be deliberate about focusing on delivering that C, whichever one it is, over the next week, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's wherever you go. Because while AI may be degrading some skills, there's no doubt that we're learning others, and we do need to focus on these human skills. So I'd recommend that, I think, Gee.
Excellent. Now, finally, we have a question we ask all of our guests. Is there a best piece of invaluable advice that you've been given? It could be in the workplace or personally that you'd like to pass on.
I've already mentioned it. I think it's the Marcus Aurelius quote. It's about the happiness of your life is being dependent on the quality of your thoughts. So since I heard that, it really hit hard, because obviously when he said this, or when these words were written down, he wasn't thinking about social media. He wasn't thinking about AI. He wasn't thinking about geopolitical tensions in the 21st century. But I think it really helped me determine, and generally having a kind of stoic attitude, only controlling what you can control. It really helped anchor me, really.
Ole, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
A big thanks to Oliver for joining us on the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of The Switch, make sure to follow, rate and share it with somebody who's ready for a career change. And if you're on your own journey, hit subscribe. We've got plenty more inspiration and insights coming your way. I'm Gee Foottit and you've been listening to The Switch from St James's Place Financial Advisor Academy.